and welcome to episode 8 of Hardcore Gaming 101.net's top 47,858 games of all time podcast, where we objectively and definitively rank games you nominate on Twitter. I'm Xerxes, and barring some kind of starvation scenario, I could probably go the rest of my life without a single pretzel. My panelists today are...
I'm Satanga.
I'm X Factor.
And I'm Call at Turdmonger on Twitter. On this podcast, we have 3 rules. Regel Nummer 1. All rankings are final, official, and scientifically accurate. Regel Nummer 2. You can nominate 3 games at a time via Twitter by hitting me up at GC9X. Regel Nummer 3. You can nominate games that have already been nominated, but please don't nominate games that we've already ranked. And if you want to know which games we've already ranked, check out the master list for yourself at bit.ly/47kgames. How's my German, by the way?
Bien.
Bien.
Buono, you know.
Guten, right?
Yeah, C. Let's.
Yeah.
Okay, so our first game for the show was nominated by @MiloScat on Twitter, and it is Mega Man 2 for the Game Boy Advance. So it's the second of 4, I believe, Mega Man 0 games that came out for the Game Boy Advance. So the Mega Man 0 series was a total of 4 games, all on the Game Boy Advance, and I believe they're all a direct continuation of the Mega Man X series on the Super Nintendo and otherwise. Am I right about that?
Yeah, it's even more distant future than Mega Man X, which itself was already a distant future to the original Mega Man. Somehow they're all canon with each other. I think even Legends is canon, and it's like after like 3 apocalypses, it's the world's all covered in water.
Like, at what point did the robots gain the ability? Like, who programmed the robots to have like existential dilemmas and depression and stuff like that? Because that seems like something you could just patch out, you know?
That came around in the X series, I believe, and the human element was downplayed. I'm willing to guess there weren't too many humans left, and I guess there are even less in 0. The lore for Mega Man gets a little iffy when it comes around to 0, I think, and although that is too bad because apparently the story is a slightly larger element than in prior games, which...
It's a huge element. It takes forever to get started in this game. It just keeps going and going and going, talking about stuff that I don't...
Excluding the prologue, it takes literally like 18 minutes to go from the prologue to like the first level.
Oh my god! I fell down a pit and lost my how many lives do you start out with? 3 in the prologue level, and I had to go back, and it really starts you back from the stupid like text crawl and stuff at the beginning. It goes all the way back. Like, why on earth do that?
Old school difficulty with an old school punishment.
No, not old school punishment. No game prior to like the year 2001 would ever do that to you. Nobody would do that to you because they didn't do that. They didn't have prologue stages in Mega Man games that had that much honest to God text crawl, like a Star Wars style text crawl.
So here's the question, and this is going to sound really stupid, but just based on what you guys have been saying here, Game Boy Advance was a handheld platform, right?
No,
I didn't think so.
Yeah, it's Game Boy. Yeah,
I can't imagine why you would make somebody sit there and read so much text on a handheld device.
Well, that was the style at the time. They wanted the Game Boy Advance was, I think, like it was like, look, we have proper, serious, real games now. It's not like quick, like mini arcade game things. We have proper big games. They're all long RPG games. Like that was their...
Yeah, I mean, I guess the attraction of the Mega Man 0 series would be it has like some kind of continuing story. Like I cannot put myself in the frame of mind where I would appreciate this. This seems like the exact opposite of what Mega Man is good at doing. But I'm sure there are people out there who like it. They tried something different, I guess. I don't know. They were going in this direction even back with like Mega Man 8 where they're like having it's like more cartoon stuff thrown in there, and then with I guess some of the X games kind of.
They really, I mean, they wanted to push more story in these games. The Game Boy Advance was full of story-based Mega Man games because there was that, and there was whole Battle Network thing as well.
Battle Network games, yeah.
It's just nothing but like story. Which is really weird for what Mega Man was, which was just this like super condensed experience where you just ran through levels and killed bosses.
What's fun about there was no point playing the original NES Mega Man games where it was like, I really wish they would explain what was going on behind the scenes. Like, how does Snake Man feel about being Snake Man? I want to know. It just didn't really occur to me. Maybe I was like not a very sophisticated, 9-year-old, but I just didn't.
I think it's a big like at this time, anime was like becoming really huge outside of Japan. Like this was like the big time when anime like rebroke into the mainstream, and was like all geeks were like anime and anime plots and let's all get anime. Like this was the huge time for that. And I think that Capcom and stuff were like, well, they want really long elaborate stories, so let's just give it to them then.
I mean, one cool thing they did in this game that I noticed is that at least in the prologue, there's a couple. They do a couple like not cutscenes, but like a couple like they just throw up images on there to kind of do like a basically doing like the Ninja Gaiden style cinematic scene, but they do it for like close-ups and stuff, so you get to see like a close-up of Zero throwing like why a robot needs a scarf I'll never understand, but
don't get it wrong, like this game looks really cool. This is a huge budget in this game for Game Boy Advance.
It is. I mean, considering that we're probably not going to get another mainline Mega Man game ever again, most likely. It's really, you can't. I mean, we can make fun of it, but there's something special about the fact that they even tried. I'd rather be complaining about something that's like, man, they put way too much effort in some of this stuff than say, you know what I mean? That's like, and then they'd be saying like, oh man, nobody cared about this, and it was just put on the shelves.
I didn't have any experience on this, like this particular part of the Mega Man franchise. It's not a franchise I'm huge on in general, and I just looked at it and was like, wow, this looks really this looks fantastic.
What I find interesting about Mega Man Zero, the entire series, not just this one, is that despite being a direct continuation to Mega Man X, it feels absolutely nothing like that series. It has a more sort of, I want to say almost fantasy-like design about it now. It's like a really vivid use of color, and it feels less dark than X does at first, but like then the story gets more dark somehow. Something like about some sort of wars and resistances, giant fights for power. I mean, I played through all 4 games, and honestly, I don't remember much of the story at all. But like you said, that's never really been Mega Man's emphasis. It's usually just about the running
it has been, and it was the Zero series, and we all kind of, most of us sat it out because we were probably just too old to care.
Yeah, I set it out at first until they released...
As a Mega Man game, though, how is this?
Pretty good, but if I compare it to the rest of the series, 2 was actually my least favorite. And that's because it is kind of bullshit. Even more so than the rest of the series. I just think that there's some level designs that have too many damn spikes in them, and that it feels a little bit more trial and error like, that I feel it's more challenging than it should be, and
it feels like, to me, it's, look, Mega Man games are supposed to be hard. And the only reason why someone like me gets frustrated with a game like this, and sometimes I feel like when I play, because I set the X games out, because once I saw like Launch Octopus, I was like, I don't need to do this. I'm too cool for this. I'm 13 years old. My voice is changing. I'm so much cooler than this. Like, what these animals now? Like, what happened to Napalm Man?
Oh, come on. You missed out on Bamboo Pandemonium in X8.
I missed it. I did not miss out on anything. But the thing is like, I go back and play those games now, and I'm like, these are hard. This is too hard. But is it really, or is it just that I'm old, my reflexes are slow, and I didn't play these games when I was a kid where I had much more patience? So I hesitate to say anything about the difficulty, but what I will say is that the level design in Mega Man Zero 2 does not seem very good.
No, it's more tantamount to Mega Man X6, probably the worst game in that series, where the design ethos seems to be, what's a floor? Here, have some spikes and pits.
Yeah, I mean, but it's just like a lot of wide open areas that don't seem to be very Mega Man-ish. Like
Yeah,
Mega
there's that
Man
too.
is it's like very incremental. The level design in Mega Man games is incremental, and by that I mean that you're kind of lurching along through like either not really room by room, but more like I mean sometimes it's room by room or challenge by challenge. You got the mini bosses like the giant cats that shoot yarn out of their robot cat butt, but you know, like that kind of thing. And it feels very much like, okay, I've mastered, like you kind of, as you're working your way through a stage, you're kind of like mastering each area and as you go, and each area adds something different. Like say Windman stage in Mega Man 2, like you've got the giant heads that pop up and disappear, and then you've got the part of the stage where the fan belly robots are blowing you off and that kind of stuff. And it's just like you just got to master it. Not screen by screen, but kind of screen by screen. You know, for all intents and purposes, that's what you're doing, is like room by room or screen by. This didn't really have that. It was just more like, here's a giant area with nothing to do but go forward. There were cool elements to it, but a lot of it felt like, for example, the prologue stage, right? Once Mega Man games started doing prologue stages is kind of when I checked out, because I just don't like that kind of thing. But you know, the prologue stage is like, well, this is boring, but it's a prologue stage. So it's like they're just trying to show off some stuff and then it's going to get better. But like then the next stage I go to is very similar. And the next stage is very similar. They're just big open areas, it feels like, or just go forward. And the enemy variety is not really there. There's some cool stuff. There's like which is that? Which stage is the one where you've got the spikes and you can slap the bomb type floating bomb things with your sword, and you're kind of slapping it into a spike wall and it will blast a hole in the spike wall so you can get through. That was kind of cool.
Mm-hmm. Well, I wish I had recently played an X game to see if I could have directly compared it to that, because, yeah, I want to say that the design aesthetics and controls and maybe even level design are more akin to the X series, but perhaps streamlined even a bit more. I'm willing to wager, due to just the Game Boy Advance itself, how like you have to have a smaller screen and things need to be more economical in order to fit the action on properly.
I guess, but then you've got all these Castlevania games that were on. You know, that
Yeah, that's a
which
good point.
were just all over the place. There's a really complicated stages that are very confusing, and they had no problem.
Well,
You might not
to
be able
tie
to
in with
see
the
what you're
graphics,
doing, but
they really, you know, it's very up close, tight view to make everything look really, really pretty and big. So, you know, that's a drawback. If you have huge sprites that look nice, then you can only fit.
you can't have a
few
lot
things on
of
screen.
stuff to do on the screen. Yeah, I mean, unless you want to have every screen be like multi-level type things, and I guess they just didn't want to do that. But then you look at a game like even Mega Man Powered Up for the PSP, which has gigantic characters and basically does what Mega Man games do. I mean, I know that the PSP screen is much bigger, but still, like I feel like the amount of screen real estate that the characters take up is comparable, if not, you know, maybe a little bit smaller, but comparable. And I'd take that game over this any day of the week. But you know, I'm old, so.
Well, I feel that the classic indie X games, most of them, become certainly less difficult if you're willing to put in enough practice, and they do feel fair once you get used to everything. But
They are designed around like different kind of like what I would consider like not really Mega Man-y mechanics, which is like when you watch the people who are really good at this game play it, they basically just don't even use the blaster. They just use the sword almost all the time.
yeah, exactly.
And the game is actually a lot harder if you don't use the sword all the time. And the cool thing is that in the Zero games, you can just select you can decide which button does which. You can basically do something kind of like controller mapping.
Yeah, I thought that was
within the game itself, which is very handy. Although I wish that if the GBA had more buttons, it would be a lot easier. But
yeah, I would say that unless you're like super invested in the lore, Mega Man Zero 3 is 2 but better. The level designs, I thought, felt fairer while still being challenging and more engaging. 2 itself, I don't know, the level designers fell a little asleep at the wheel. As someone who's a giant fan of all Mega Man, even I have to admit, it just feels like they were putting in almost like ROM hack levels of difficulty, where you have to, like, you know, hang on this wall for like 20 seconds as you keep trying to explode this wall on the other side, and it's I don't know. I think it just feels a little sloppy, to be honest.
yeah, I would agree. I mean, I like that they did something different. I mean, if you're getting this far into the Mega Man series, like, you better make a different kind of game. Like the X series had to exist because you can't just keep doing just regular Mega Man games.
Yeah,
and this game is way faster. It seems like it's capable of playing way faster and more fluid and more. People are gonna not like this comparison, but it plays a lot like kind of an old school Ninja Gaiden game in some parts of it, where you're kind of like, you're really up close and you're just dealing with. You're not dealing with like the constant, you know. You don't have the bats and stuff, that kind of thing, but the level design in Ninja Gaiden was basically just left to right, right to left, and a lot of up close and personal attacks. And I feel like this game is about the same.
I was definitely getting some Shinobi 3 vibes from the whole thing, which is comparable to Ninja Gaiden. That was mostly because also the wall jumping and stuff was like, it's really feeling like Ninja, like Shinobi in places. And
it does have a grappling hook, which we said is pretty key. That's one of the deciding factors that we have to consider. So
I believe the hook is actually endemic to 2. I don't think any of the other games had it, but they do have like another special sub weapon that's equivalent. Like I said, it's been a while since I played the others. All I can tell you is that, like, the first Zero game had more of a open format to it, where, like, you had specific missions set at different stages. It was almost Metroid-like. It was kind of weird how that worked out. And then onward, it was a more standard format, and I thought that was kind of odd in the first game. I honestly prefer that they changed it back.
I mean, the great thing about the Zero games is that if you want to just have everything, you can do it, because they put out the Mega Man Zero collection for the DS, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's got all 4 games, and that pretty much takes care of it. And you should check it out. And what we should do is rank this mother. So I know that's usually Cal's thing, but I don't hate this game. But I also don't like this game, and I feel like maybe it's kind of unfair for me to say that, because I'm just kind of old, and it's like I don't like people tinkering with. That's not my Mega Man, you know, that kind of thing. But
I said that about Battle Network when it was first released, so it's.
But that's a totally different kind of game. I mean, this is basically a Mega Man game. It's just doing something different, and because it's different, it threatens me on just a very deep level. I don't know. I mean, I'm putting it like I got to be honest. Like I'm thinking like it's around like I don't know. I'm honestly saying like below King's Quest V, right there. I just don't think it's that.
Jesus, you're gonna get us stabbed.
No, because there are better Zero games.
Yeah. Well, how many Zero games are there actually?
4.
And then what are the ZX games?
Yeah, the 2 ZX games on DS are an even further continuation. Kind of, sort of, but not really. I haven't played the ZX games, so I don't know what to tell you how they fit in story-wise. But I do think that you are placing it quite low. However, as a self-professed Mega Man expert, I said that I personally feel this is the weakest of the 4 Zero games, so I don't want to give it too much credence.
It's just, I mean, it's...
Well, I mean, is it like... Okay, so I have no mouth and I must scream directly above King's Quest V. Is it like less competent than that? Because that game is pretty big of a mess.
That game's impossible to beat, and literally impossible if you're playing the German version that cut Nindoc out.
And I realize that that's not necessarily like a straight up like fair thing, but I mean, you know, Mega Man 02, it delivers on, you know, it's a game, it's pretty fun, it works quite well, it looks quite good. I just don't know, is it that low? Like
it's hard to this is one of those situations where although it's the first Mega Man game we're ranking, and I want to say thank you to the guy who just nominated 3, 5, and 6 the Mega Man games, because that'll be fun to deal with, but you can't look at this game and just consider it on its own merits, because it's a part of a huge series, and it is very low on the totem pole of the Mega Man games.
But we've also got we're looking at the low pole of games as we track down.
I think King's Quest V is like a.
I think King's Quest V is surprisingly low, but I mean that's because it was an early ranker.
It was an early ranking, but also I mean our reasons were that
you guys just kept on going on about Murder Boat.
The Murder Boat is. I mean, you got to listen to the King's Quest V episode of Game Club 1990X, the previous format for the HG 101 podcast. But you got to listen to that to really understand our problem with it. Because I went into playing that game liking it a lot more, thinking I was going to like it as much as I did when I was a kid. I played it again. I'm like, this is not fun at all. This is just
no. You walk into a bar and you just get the shit kicked out of you. Like that's the game.
Yeah, it's a lot of. But you know what? I can remember stuff that happens to me in that game. Whereas with Mega Man 02, I really struggle to, I mean, there's just nothing. I mean, okay, like it just feels like a mediocre,
okay, like
Mega Man game. Like
I said, it was a really good like Game Boy Advance game, like visually.
Yeah, but
it is kind of like
other ones.
It's a AAA game, AAA Game Boy Advance game, but it's it's a flatline one. It existed when it came out. People bought it. People liked it, and that's it. Like it stopped.
Right.
Like it's like a AAA release that comes out, and it's not like it's like one from this year that wasn't Doom or Overwatch. Like it's just like it's a shooter.
Oh, so like
okay.
Infinite Warfare.
Yeah, like it's just one that's like wow, they put a lot of money and it's competent. And
yeah, I mean. And the thing is if you're going to play this game now, buy the DS collection for the Zero games, and I guarantee you're going to like this one the least. I mean, even the way that people are going to consume this game now. So where would you put it, Cal?
I want to put it like it's only like a few steps higher. I would put it somewhere maybe below ESWAT or below Poltergeist. Somewhere.
I was thinking somewhere in that wheelhouse, too. It would be more playable than Haunting, which I feel is a fun game in concept, but kind of a mess in practice. How about between Road Rash and Haunting? Does that sound about fair?
I mean, I certainly wouldn't push it too high, because I think that Rainbow Islands is a better game, and I think ESWAT is a better game than 02. But, yeah, like...
I think Road Rash is a better game.
Okay.
But I mean, once you get below Road Rash, you're starting to talk about games that are
they're interesting but failed is the
right. And I don't even think this thing qualifies in that.
Well, below King's Quest V is like King's Quest V is not the worst King's Quest of the games of the King Quest franchise.
Let's put it this way, all right?
This is not the worst.
Cal, this is a criterion you came up with, and I really like this, which is that you look at games when you're kind of dealing with weirdo games like this, where it's really hard to peg what its value is. You can look at it as, how do we rank this in terms of, if I had to pick one game to throw into, I believe you turned the forever furnace so that it would never exist again and nobody would ever be able to play it again. Like.
Yeah, I would definitely.
Which would it be? And like,
I would definitely throw this one in. Definitely.
Yeah, it's just.
I can't argue with myself there. Like.
Well, that's not the only way to look at it, but that's one way of dealing with the issue of how do you.
The problem here is that because we don't have any other Mega Man games on the list. That's our problem here.
Yeah, but they exist. Like
I do. But I would definitely put most of the Mega Man games a little higher. You know, they'd chalk up a bit higher.
Yeah, I would too. That's my point. Is there?
Yeah.
Is that this is like a very.
Is this the worst Mega Man? Excluding Mega Man PC.
No. Mega Man 2. Mega
Okay.
Man 2 on the Game Boy is
No,
pretty
not counting.
horrible.
Not counting the Mega Man, like the offshoot games or the
Like
but
fake
I-
Mega Man games.
Mega
Yeah, I
Man
mean, like,
X6 and X7 are really awful. I can affirm that too.
Mega Man 8 is no great shakes either.
I like 8, but that's a debate for another time. Yeah, Zero 2 is really tricky to place along with the rest of the series and on this list, but I will give credit that, we're talking about Zero 2 before, Mega Man 2 or Mega Man X1, and I think that's just pretty, far out that we're just covering such
Alright, well,
deep
but
cut for the series.
what about below Poltergeist? Because I like Poltergeist, and I think it's very it's a unique, clever idea that they put together.
You're putting it above Nightshade then,
Nightshade.
and above
I
Live Alive or
I
whatever,
do
Live Alive or whatever.
really love Night.
Does anyone actually want to play Live Alive?
No, I do. I think it's a fairly one of Sawyer's most underrated.
I'm
Are
actually
you arguing
playing
that Mega
through it
Man
right
should
now.
be lower? Because are you pushing it? Because you're going to push it below King's Quest again. That's where you're pushing it, Satengo.
I'll argue that.
You're pushing it down. It's going down.
Push it down the well.
All right, fine. I have unintentionally downvoted it from my original placement. So
No,
here's
you
my
didn't unintentionally. You saw the light of reason.
I'll cut you a final offer
Oh
here.
god damn it.
Between Live Alive and I Have No Mouth, because
Okay.
a game like I Have No Mouth is just incomprehensible for me to get in. Mega Man Zero 2, even if not remarkable in the long run, is at least engaging for the now.
There are two games that deal with like the futility of existence, and
There's another point, yeah. So they be brothers. Yeah, put them on the list together. Have an unseparated. How about that?
I don't have enough stakes in Mega Man as a franchise to even fight. I'm sorry,
but
fans
it
of Mega
doesn't.
Man.
It's
but
even if you did, why would you defend this game over? Like, I can understand if you're talking Mega Man 5. I mean, that's a contentious issue. You know, some people like me really like Mega Man 5 and feel like it's underrated and would put it higher just to give it extra attention.
I have no doubt that people who were at the right age for the Game Boy Advance were like, I love the Mega Man Advance games. These are my favorite ones. I love them all. Like, I know that. They're going to be the same one. They're going to be like people like you, except they were on the Game Boy Advance instead of the NES.
Yeah, but they're
I know
younger
that they
and
will love
therefore
this
their
game.
opinion matters less. I mean, I'm not slagging the whole Zero series.
The
I
Zero
don't mind those games.
Yeah, the
I'm
Zero
just saying this is
series
the worst
are-
one of the four.
Yeah. The Zero series is fine as it is, but as I said earlier, I feel that 3 and 4 are definitely better games than 2, and the first game is more notable for its odder structure. 2 just kind of falls in between the cracks, and even from a story perspective, I don't think it's as engaging as the others, because its villain is not really a great villain. He's a ball.
Stop beating it, Satenga. It's already dead.
Okay, between Live Alive and I Have No Mouth, we have talked way too long about this. And we
Okay,
have
so
technical
me and
difficulties.
Satenga can live with that.
Yeah.
So
Yes,
we'll take
yes,
that. Who
Seal it away.
disagrees?
You know, no one's disagreeing at this point.
And,
It's done.
X, yay or nay?
I'm good.
All right.
You
X-
guys go.
You know,
Perfect.
I'm
Now,
done
Brand the
pushing
cow.
things down the well.
Stick a knife in
Get
it.
it done.
That's enough about this.
All right, so right under Live Alive, right above I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream. Thank you to Milo Scat.
hey, that's a new name on the list, isn't it?
It is.
Ta-da.
Yes. But
and
Don't
pays-
ever do
it
that
pays
to my
be
Milo, you
If you're
disgusting
a listener
animal.
and you really want to hear us say your name, if you're nominate games if you haven't already, because we really do prefer to choose people who haven't been chosen before.
The thing is, like, I mean, I love some of the people that have a lot of names on the list. We all know the guy that keeps nominating the worst games. Damn it, Steven, you son of a bitch.
Oh, he's got a competitor. We'll get to that guy soon. There's somebody else who just deliberately nominated the worst games games that even test the boundaries of what a game is. But we'll get to that this episode, I promise you. So our next game for the show is Armed Police Batrider, which is an arcade game shooter, and it was nominated by @Resonance333.
This guy's got good taste in games. Let me put that straight out there.
Yeah. But this is, I believe, is it our first shooter?
Well,
no, we got UN Squadron.
Oh yeah, of
it's
course.
our first manic shooter. Let's say that it's our
Right.
first
Yeah.
specific style of '90s super crazy everything all at once shooter, for
Yeah,
better or
it's,
worse. But yeah, I want to get ahead of myself.
Yes.
Well, it's like a caravan style shooter, right? Deep
Karnov
cut there,
style?
I guess. Not Karnov style, but
No.
I would
summer
accept that.
Carnivals at Hudson, was it, made those types of
Right, like
shmups?
you get to the like Rekka type games, right? Where it's just like a vertical scrolling shooter where your weapons are basically designed to take up the entire screen.
I mean, we're talking like just bullet hell, basically, aren't we?
But no, I
guess-
don't know. Would it qualify as bullet hell? I don't know.
think
about
so. Like, it's close. It's like a seed game. Like, it's one of those games where it's not quite there, but it definitely has the elements.
Yeah, it definitely comes close to it because there's definitely some shooting patterns there that are really difficult to avoid.
That is true.
And it does do the that like your ship is like the tiny dot is your hitbox. Like, you only have like a tiny
Right,
smidgen,
yeah, it's got super generous hitbox. That's another.
which
that
you
probably-
really need because this game is
You need it,
it's
yeah.
pretty hard.
I'm going
That
to
stuff drives me nuts. Yeah.
I'm going
Go
to
ahead.
throw out a deep cut before we get too much farther. Rising's games, I think, are better than Caves. So, how about that? I kind of...
Rising's still around?
I think so, but they're not like their own developer now. Like, I remember that they actually helped out on the development of Tatsunoko vs. Capcom and Marvel vs. Capcom 3, but I forget what they've done since then.
Okay, but does anyone know the story of Batrider so we can start talking about
That's a
Batrider?
story.
Well, there's got to be a story. It's got all these flying characters and robots and
I guess
shooting.
if you're calling it Batrider, that deserves some kind of explanation, but I don't know whether I'd consider that a story.
There's literally no bats, and I don't really
Well-
consider there to be any riding.
Well,
You're not really-
I can tell you this. According to Wikipedia, it does have a plot, but it took place 2 years ago.
Yeah, in the year 2014, so, yeah,
And nobody noticed, so it can't be that.
you can find this in any American history textbook. I'm sure that, it's already common knowledge, and they have all sorts of History Channel specials about it, so I don't think we really need to explain it in depth. We'd just be treading the water there.
The Armed Police Batriders.
I do like that it was
the
Baron.
year of 2002.
This is like from like 1997 or something. They weren't like shooting that far. Like, in 2014 everything will be like this. It's cool. Come
Well,
on, guys. That was
I don't know about the
optimistic.
lore of the game, and I can't imagine the lore of the game even mattering to how we rank it.
Yeah.
There's nothing that matters less than the lore of a shooter.
Even I have to agree, except maybe
How-
for Einhander, but even then that's still kind of light.
Shooters have to do. They basically have to look cool, and they have to be fair enough that if you really practice hard, you can accomplish.
Yeah, they have to have the skill ceiling has to sort of eventually crumble into you can beat the game without dying.
Right. It has to be beatable. It has to be beatable, and which basically disqualifies almost every Euro shooter ever because they're not designed to like have any kind of, I don't know. But
Yeah, this isn't about Euro shooters. It's about a very typical top-down Japanese style shooting everything.
typical for the late 90s, right?
Yes.
This is like 97, 98.
This is where
when-
they'd evolved.
This is where shooters had kind of stopped coming to your house, knocking on your door and say, "Hey, play me." They're more like, "Yeah, you can come play me if you want to. I don't care."
This game really brings a lot to the field, though. You have a ton of like playable ships. Like it's awesome.
And it does look cool. It's got great artwork. You start out with what, 4 playable ships?
9, actually. They're like 3 teams of 3, and like King of Fighters, you actually have to choose 3 of the ships, and then they all have their different firing patterns and sub-weapons. And but it looks like 9 at first, but if you go to the edit, you have twice as much ships, which were actually cameoed over from 2 of Rising's prior games, Battle Garaga and Maho Daisakusen? Shoot, I forgot how to pronounce that, but
I'm sure someone who knows it will figure it out.
Yeah, those are good games as well, but it's like Batrider is sort of like the culmination of everything that Rising's made so far, and it just makes for a totally balls out on the edge experience that I think is more refined than anything they've done up to this point.
Yeah, so the way it works is that you've got your 3 ships. You cycle between them every time you die, I believe. Do you have a button that changes them, or do you just cycle? Because
well, each ship is a life. When one dies, the next one takes its place.
And yeah, you've got this really impressive edit mode, like crazy, that you can just pick out of you pick out of 18 ships. That's insane. That's a lot of, and they're all different. Like they all have a different fire pattern. They all have a different bomb to an extent. Someone want to explain the way the shooting mechanics works? I couldn't quite nail it down, but it's not just hold and shoot. There's like a extra like charge ability going on.
I nominate someone besides me. Yeah, there was a charge thing. But,
you can't. Yeah, mostly I think you can get by holding and shooting. The charge doesn't really do too much different. It mostly just holds your sub-weapon in place while you fly around and take your main shot wherever. It's, I think, more of a technical move than anything, but I will admit I'm a big fan of a lot of shoot-'em-ups, but there are some that have some really inside baseball mechanics that not even I can figure out, and we're probably going to get a lot of flack from the shmups community for not doing all our research properly, but
but this is a problem though with talking about games like this. You're talking about a game that was basically made to like sticking a thumb up the ass of so many people, like just saying like, I don't care if you like this or not. Like you've got to really like these kinds of games, and it doesn't care about it. It's not trying to win over a huge audience. And
no, this is the shmup is shmup.
Yeah, it's pretty niche. That late '90s string of manic shooters like these. I'm more of a fan of somewhat more conservative, yet still no less difficult games like Gradius and R-Type and what have you. But for what this is, for this type of like sublet of shmups, Batrider is at least one of the better ones from what I've played.
Is there anything else that makes this game stand out amongst its peers that we should talk about before we rank it?
The one thing I know is you can pick to do a boss rush right from the title. Like you can just play boss rush mode if you want, because it has like this weird level select.
And that's is that on the coin op version or?
Yeah, I think it's a dip switch setting. You can play 5 levels, which I think is slightly easier, 7 levels, which is slightly harder. You have a boss rush, which takes you through, I think, all the bosses. I don't know if there's anything extra at the end. I didn't get that far, but
I have found that the boss rush actually does include extra bosses away from the main course, which once again are taken from Battle Garaga and Maho Daisakusen, the prior games that those selectable characters are from, and it's some fun stuff in there. Like the bosses are just like really impressive tour de forces, and I'd say maybe a slightly fairer challenge than the levels themselves, odd as that might sound, but well, no, the last boss is pretty heinous. He has like a waistband full of lasers or something like that, so that's pretty ouchy.
How do you rank a game like this? Because
I guess you go with how fun you thought it was when you played it.
That doesn't sound very scientific. But then again,
okay, let me just get my coin.
Yeah, exactly. Then again,
there you go.
How many games do we have on the list? I'll go get like a 50-sided die and I'll roll it, and that's where it'll end up.
Yeah, we do actually have.
Okay, look. I mean, we can say that this game does it?
Are you saying we're
accomplish
ranking
what
this
it-
game? Have we moved to ranking?
I think we have to. How much more can we say about it?
Okay.
I
Let's
could
rank.
say something I just found about how it scores, and this is some really insight-based
Yeah, okay,
stuff,
let's
but
talk about the scoring system. Go
apparently
ahead.
you do get bonus points if enemy fire hits your ship but not your hitbox. If it just hits just barely around the hitbox, you somehow get like a massive spike in bonus points. And I can't pull this off. I
remember the
pretty
I think
easily.
Mars Matrix had a feature like that, like it had like
Yeah.
grazing or something.
Yeah,
where you
grazing.
got,
That's
like-
exactly what it's called. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're not the only games to feature that higher end mechanic as well. But as for like super pros who,
If the game is too easy for you,
Yeah,
here's some extra challenge.
I'll say that when I played this game earlier today for a refresher, I had to continue 16 times to beat the full course, which I'm pretty sure is I really poor. I usually use less continues on Final Fight style beat 'em ups. So
Don't tell them that we used credits or they'll kill us.
oh yeah, they would do that, wouldn't they? Well, I don't care. These games are meant to be enjoyed, not put yourself through a damn blender to necessarily.
No, I mean it was meant to be. It is meant to be mastered. Let's not kid
Yeah, this game
ourselves.
is designed to be mastered. That's definitely it's
that
not
is the
trying
point of this kind of game. It's designed
Although it
to be
is very
mastered.
fair. It doesn't kick you back to checkpoints or anything. I know there's a handful of
At
spots that
least,
kick you back
yeah.
to checkpoints. It doesn't do that. You
Yeah.
start. where
Well,
you
I mean,
start.
for like things like I think the strength of arcade shooters is that unlike arcade beat 'em ups, they are trying to be fair. You know, they're trying to be like you can figure this out and kind of get better at it. Whereas with the beat 'em ups, like although I prefer that genre, I'll admit that they really don't. There's no balancing or anything like that. Nope, nobody's testing that out to see like can anybody really do this if they try hard. And nobody cares. Like if it they're
Well,
just
yeah.
designed to suck down quarters. And for shooters, I don't think they're certainly not unhappy if they suck down quarters, but they
Well, no, the challenge of these games is you have to spend a lot of money to get good at them. That was the way it works. You know.
right. And I mean it's a kind of I mean really in the 90s this is a kind of long tail type marketing strategy where it's like most people are going to hate this game, but the people who like it are going to spend a ton of money because it's going to communicate to them that you can get better at this. And that's what
And this one goes the extra mile because it has a bunch of different ships to play and master.
right,
you know,
which
it's
is
like-
not easy to do when you're making a game. So that's
It does let you play as a single ship, though. If you really want to, you can choose only one ship. You know, it's got all these options to let you do what you want, which is nice.
which you would assume are there because they know that there's going to be some kind of fan community that's going to develop around this kind of whether they want it to or not. So you might as well give them the stuff they want.
It's one of the most flexible arcade games I've seen in terms of letting you really tailor your experience. I don't know how common it is, but it's
I don't think it's that common. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that's normal, even for niche shooters like this.
Let's rank it.
Yeah, I feel like I'm not saying this is where we should rank it. I'm just saying like it's a similar dilemma to ranking Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, because you're talking about a game that is somewhat accessible, but its real strengths are in the real things that make it stand out are there for people who are devoted to this kind of game. And that's not me. So I can't.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. This game is playable and enjoyable, even if you're not like a massive, like, I've got to get through this game with 1 CC. Like, no, you can enjoy it if you're just like, you know, just to lightly challenge yourself and try not to die, you know. If you meet the game halfway, you know, if you're like, I'm going to just spam credits and MAME and press bomb over and over.
I mean,
like, yeah.
There's like a cutoff for me, and this is kind of that moment in the genre's history. I'm like, you know what? I don't think I feel like you can hold its inaccessibility against it. I don't think that's unfair. But I also think it is necessary to say like, well, it achieves what it sets out to do, and it does it very well. And for the kind of game, the kind of shooter it is, it's very, very good. I just don't know how you factor that in with the rest of the games on the list.
Well, my opinion, if we're gonna go with the games on the list, okay, let's just look at some of the games on the list that I think we can look at. You got Alien Soldier, you got Contra Hard Corps. These two are kind of like, they're tough games that are master games. You're supposed to master these games. And I think that in a lot of ways, Batrider is comparable to them in terms of the way it hits the player. It's like, it's really hard, but you can master it, and it's a really solid version of that genre.
On those terms, is it as good at what it sets out to do as Alien Soldier is at what it sets out to do?
I mean, you guys are the guys that play more shmups. I think it's...
I don't.
I think oh, you haven't played like
I
shmups
feel like
since,
I should be speaking
Galaga.
more, since I have probably played the most shmups out of anyone here, but I feel that Alien Soldier and even Contra Hardcore have a somehow lower skill gate than games like Batrider do. In so much the sense that you're just aiming to beat those games, and they do have limited. Actually, Alien Soldier only has limited continues on its harder difficulty, but Batrider, you can technically just credit feed your way to the end. But I do definitely feel less satisfied if I do that. But on the other hand, if I try to beat it, getting as far as I can in as few credits, I just find that no matter how many times I've tried, I can't beat whatever limit I try to set for myself. I can't even get down to 10 credits, and much less one CC.
It's a game to be mastered. That's the thing.
Yeah,
it's
but
a game to be mastered. But like I said, I do think it's fair to consider this.
If you think it's too hard. But
I think
not
it
just
is
too hard,
honestly.
but being like it's too niche. It's like saying like if you made a game that only 1 out of 100 gamers would appreciate, but is really good, and that person's going to really, you put a lot of effort into it. It's a really well made game, but literally 1% of the whole gamer.
My response to that is I really hope no one tells us to do like a farm simulator or a train simulator, because we'll be screwed.
I don't know about that. I feel like those are more accessible in a way where you can just say that's just accessible, because nobody's afraid of saying like, oh, this farm simulator is not fun. I don't.
Yeah, but it's supposed, it reaches the same but someone's going to be like.
But shooters have this kind of cachet, Shooters have this kind of.
Well, yeah, they have an inherent
attached to them, and I don't know whether they deserve it. I don't know whether I love shooters.
I mean, they're one of the founding genres of gaming, basically.
Yes, but there's a point where they stopped being for normal people.
I'm not convinced that Batrider marks that point. I think
it might not. It might not.
I think that point was the advent of Cave, to be honest. Don Pachi and what else other they've done. Which I don't want to deride the Cave shooters for just being what they are, because they're very good at what they're doing, but they are.
It is not for most people. It is not. It's really hard to consider those things when you're ranking them up against other games. Accessibility and playability and appeal matter. It's you can't. This isn't just if this were a show where we just reviewed games in terms of should you buy this game or not, then it's easy. It's like, if you really like shooters, definitely check this out. If you are a big fan of more or less modern shoot 'em ups, you have to play this.
We can talk about how it should be considered, but we got to put it in the list.
Just before we do that, I don't think we've heard enough from X about this. I'm not sure if you wanted to opine on anything we've been talking about.
I'm okay. I've been chiming in every so often if I think of anything, but I honestly didn't have much to comment on. I only just played it for the first time today, so.
What he meant to say is that he's an expert on it, and he thinks that what we've said pretty much covers all the bases. I'm saying below Alien Soldier. I'm saying below Castlevania 4.
Yeah.
I'm saying below Worms Armageddon. I'm saying below Space Harrier, Mario Land, Descent, Monster Land. But it's got to be below Blue Stinger.
Because this is the thing. Blue Stinger, I've been looking at this list. The whole time you've been talking, I've been trying to nail it down. And I'm thinking around there. Yeah.
I'm thinking, well, it's got to be worse than Blue Stinger because, to the best of my knowledge, there is no Dog's Bower in Armed Police Batrider. And
That
if
was-
there was Dog's
We're
Bower,
going to get
it
so
would be a
much
better game.
flack for placing Blue Stinger as high as we have. I just realized.
I don't think I haven't gotten that flack. I'm the guy who's checking that Twitter account, and nobody says a word because it's
they
irrefutable.
have to answer the dogs. I mean, what
They have
are
to
you going
answer
to
the
do?
I honestly think anybody who is going to cuss us out for covering Blue Stinger at all, or anybody who's familiar with Blue Stinger at all, is probably going to see how high it is on the list and go, "Oh, okay, sure, we'll go with that."
Well, that's
I'm saying above Outrun 2006, possibly above Third Strike.
Honestly, I think I really think this is better than I think it's better than UN Squadron as a condensed experience.
Is it better at what it sets out to do than Hardcore is? Contra Hardcore.
That is the harder question because I think Hard Corps is one of the best Contras.
It is, but it's a difficult game, but it is way more accessible than Batrider.
It is, yes.
I think one of Batrider's big weaknesses is that it's an arcade game, so it doesn't really have the opportunity to properly be accessible. It definitely
it's not trying to be though. Like you don't. Let's not kid ourselves. Like it doesn't have to be. I'm not saying that
it does have a tutorial mode where it's like it auto fires for you or something. I'm not quite sure what that mode does. I never opened it, but it has like a really basic 3-round mode for extreme beginners. So it tries, it tries a little bit.
But even that is who's going to be like, well, I'm going to put in my 100 yen and I'm going to play the tutorial.
Play baby mode. Yeah.
Yes. It's like only the people who are devoted to this genre are going to even. Everybody else is going to look at this and be like, no. I mean,
it gives you more concessions than some shmups.
Darius has 3 screens right next to each other. I'm going to play that. It's one of those games. It's a very niche game. It's very good at what it does. It's not probably the best there is at what it does, but it's up there, I think. If you really like this kind of game, you have to play Armed Police Batrider.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. If you're a fan of shmups and you haven't played it, it's absolutely.
But how many people are we talking about here? Not fan of shmups. You're a fan of
You're a fan of. I think if you enjoyed Contra Hard Corps, I think you would enjoy Batrider. I think there's enough overlap in terms of challenge there.
I don't know about that.
Here, can I chime in with my personal placement?
No.
All right. Yeah. Well, too bad because I'm giving it anyway. I agree.
Dialogue.
I'm going to agree above Outrun 2006 as much as I like that. I'm going to place it below Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, however.
Please explain.
I think that, comparing fighting games and shoot 'em ups is a little apples and oranges.
No, it's science. It's science.
All right. Well, I just have always thought that Street Fighter 3, it's complex to an extent, but it doesn't feel like it really wants to drag your face through the
sweet spot,
dirt
doesn't it?
For you to really get great. I mean,
As a guy who basically did nothing, but I probably spent 25 minutes of my life just slagging all over Street Fighter 3. In terms of what it sets out to do, 50% of the characters being garbage notwithstanding, it is accessible to normal people. A normal person can play the game and appreciate it and have fun with it.
Do you think normal people can't play Batrider?
Yes, I do.
My hands stop working. And
unless
then
you're going to spend $10, I do.
Let me step back a bit here. Yeah, I think that, Third Strike really is easier to get into, even if you just stick to Ryu and Ken all the time. That's just fine. You can go with that. With Batrider, it doesn't really matter who you select. You're going to get really slagged down by bullets stage 3 onward. And I don't know if this is just because of my own personal failure to comprehend super fast-paced manic shooters.
I think you're ranking this game down because it kicked your ass. And I know that Zerx is going to say that's why we should mark it down.
I ranked it down because it took me 16 continues to beat a normal game while I tried to do it in 10. Honestly, I think that's a fair basis. This is just coming from someone who admittedly doesn't have the skill.
It's not a bad game. It is. No. It's as difficult as it set. They had a difficulty level in mind. It's deliberately difficult.
It's fair on a certain wavelength that I fail to be
difficulty curve is good too, you know. It doesn't spike at level 2.
Here's
it goes up nice.
Here's the thing about super difficult games. Is the reward for mastering it commensurate with the amount of effort it takes to master it? I don't think so.
These types of games are beyond my mastery, to be honest.
With the shmup, once you've mastered one shmup, you're a lot better at mastering the rest, you know. It's
yeah, but
it's a genre that you can genuinely get better at once you start to pick up how patterns work.
That is 100% true. And that's not even really true of fighting games, because there are different ways of making fighting games that you can be really good at a certain kind of hardcore fighting game and be terrible at another one. And not terrible, but be only above average, just because there's different flavors of fighting game. That is a good point. Like, however, we do have to put this thing somewhere. So me and Satenga are agreed on where we put it.
My main contention is simply that I think that as a shmup, I like this one more than UN Squadron, and that's my thing, you know. Like,
but UN Squadron
for me
is as a shmup, but as a just overall game.
I like UN Squadron more because it is much more accessible than Batrider and other such games. That's my.
If somebody told me I really like shmups, but I haven't played a lot of them,
I would recommend UN Squadron as a good starting point.
But I mean, are you guys going to recommend Street Fighter 3 as someone's first fighter? Because I wouldn't. That would definitely not be on my list.
I would not say no. I would say play Street Fighter 2 first, and then play Street Fighter 3.
I would say any Street Fighter is a better first fighting game to go for than most things that SNK have made. Those are slightly deeper cuts.
And I'd probably rank a lot of SNK games higher because they're really good at what they do in their genre constraints.
They are. But, you know, we're speaking about different things. We're speaking about accessibility versus good value here.
Well, the thing is, like, Batrider is not exactly accessible, but it's great value. There's a lot of game in there. I mean, you have to earn it, but there's a lot of game.
I still stick by my own placement between Third Strike and Outrun, personally. So take it or leave it.
It's all down to X at this point. He's sitting there quietly, hoping that we don't call on him.
I was afraid it was going to come down to this.
Pressure, just say what you will.
Honestly, I kind of got to go with Satenga on this one, just because, you know, I do feel that UN Squadron is a better put together game just overall, because it's, you know, it's not an arcade game. It's a complete experience. You know, you fire it up, you play it from start to finish, which, you know, may take you a day, whatever. But I mean, yeah, it for better or worse, UN Squadron is a more complete overall game than Armed Police Batrider. So I personally would put it right below UN Squadron and right above Street Fighter 3.
Slightly different from.
Okay, so it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks.
That's just.
Well, you know. Look, if he's gonna say that, you know, like I'm willing to push it down to there.
Yeah, the interesting thing about this list is that your reasons for ranking something don't have to be consistent with your reasons for ranking something else, because once it's got enough votes, it's correct.
I know.
X placed it one higher than I initially said, but I think it's meeting a happy medium with everything that we've been arguing. And as much as I do love Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, fighters are ultimately more complex than shooters, I'll have to admit. So, between UN Squadron and Third Strike, I'm willing to accept this if everyone else is.
I'm so beyond caring about this, so yeah.
Well, we filibustered that one through. Let's move on to the next
The whole
game.
concept of this podcast sucks, and I'm done.
You just realized that now?
Okay, so our next game for the show, the third game is CrazyBus, one word, which was nominated by @MegaMoses on Twitter. Mega_Moses nominated this
Let me tell you,
Genesis game. Yeah, somebody please explain this, because
this Moses is not leading us to the promised land. I tell you that.
no. If
it's
anything,
a deep cut from the Bible.
CrazyBus is the 40 years in the wilderness personified, I believe, in game.
Are we offending a religious demographic right now?
Several, I think.
Well, crap.
The fact that we know this stuff should really be inspiring to them. Like,
yeah. So
somebody cares about
CrazyBus is a game where I believe you drive a bus, kind of. I think.
Nope, you don't. You're thinking of Desert Bus. That is a game.
That was it?
CrazyBus is it's kind of like.
Well, you get to pick your bus. I know that.
You get to pick your bus, but that is, you kind of pick your bus in the way that I would compare CrazyBus to like a, I don't know, like one of those like little baby books where like you press like Thomas the Tank Engine and it says something, and you press like the other kind of train and it says something else. And that's about the extent of game this is. It's not really a game, which we're going to have
more of an interactive title screen.
It's kind of like a really obnoxious greeting card that comes in the form of a Genesis ROM. It's most famous for its music on the title screen, which is not actually music. It's just kind of randomly generated tones.
Yeah, the music is this upfront cacophony that it sounds like if a Sam Goody is imploding from some dimensional error in space-time. The Sam Goody?
Sam Goody? You're going to have to explain this to everybody who's under the age of 50.
Yeah.
Sam Goody.
Well, people, guitars and whatnot used to be actually bought in physical shops until, like everything, the internet killed it, but it's a cacophony. It barely touches upon the pain threshold of human decibel levels.
So let's explain what this is. So CrazyBus is basically a homebrew Genesis ROM tech demo type thing. It was made by somebody
in Venezuela, apparently.
Well, it's a Venezuelan effort, I guess. And it's not a knock against Venezuela. It's just a guy who was trying out some new things, coding for a Genesis thing, but dumped the ROM as if it were something.
Apparently, the guy's name is Tom Manero. Maneiro, so he doesn't have any address, but contacto Toman at TSDX. Yeah, he has his contact information right on the legalese up front of the game, so if you want to shoot this Tom email explaining
don't shoot Tom.
Where no, not to kill him, just so well, all right, maybe. I've said
scare him a little bit.
Yeah, let's go with that.
It's a warning shot. Now, I mean,
it's like he presumably put together, like, I'm just gonna show that I can make the Genesis Mega Drive chip, like I can make like a ROM on it, like I can do it. It works.
Right.
I can patch something together.
Which would be admirable. And let's make it clear, it's hard to get upset about this thing because it was never sold. So it's not like anybody like got ripped off.
No, it showed up one day.
It just showed up one day, and it's famous for being...
I feel ripped off, but that's just me.
The catch is that thanks to the tremendously impressive Genesis sound chip, combined with the title of the game, it just became legendary because it did.
Yeah, it's just kind of one of those things. It's like it's like the chocolate rain of Genesis ROMs or something. Like it wasn't really intended for mass distribution or mass consumption. It was just a thing. But now it's a thing.
It's good. The music, like, if you're into that sort of...
It could, like, theoretically, it could be... It could just do, like, the Who's Tommy all the way through. Like, it could just randomly generate
There was actually the beginning of a Yellow Magic Orchestra song that sounded similar to the CrazyBus title. In fact, for all I know, that's what it was taken from.
But the CrazyBus title could be anything.
Yeah,
You don't
it's
know.
true.
It's
That's what makes it
just
so great.
random.
It's like looking at a cloud, except it's music.
It could be
Right,
while my
or like
guitar
the
gently
room with like
weeps.
10,000 monkeys at 10,000 typewriters kind of thing.
Yeah, it could
Eventually, it will create something of value, but
be. Yeah, it could be Tom Sawyer, like just hardly squished.
Frog
through a
Rock
meat grinder.
reference overridden.
Oh,
Okay,
come on.
so
That's a light reference. If you want me to start talking about Tarkus, we could be here.
Let's not go over time on this one.
here's the thing: we gotta. I'm going to. This is one of the rare instances where I can literally describe every possible action within this game, and that's you can press start, I believe, to start the experience. Yeah, very good, very good. We're on the same wavelength here. You can press a button to honk the horn of the bus that you choose. You can press a button to make the bus go forward and another button to make the bus go backward. And that is it. And it's not even like, it's not like a driver's eye view of the bus. It's just a bus along a like horizontal plane.
With a digitized picture of a real life bus in the background.
Real life bus, like a kind of, the kind of bus you'd see probably in much of South America and Europe, and nice looking bus. I mean, it's cool that somebody was trying stuff out, but here's the problem, Mr. at Mega Moses, or Mrs. at, or Miss, or I don't think this is a game. I don't think we can rank this because the whole conceit of this show is that it's the top 47,858 games of all time, not the top 58 things of all time. Like if it were just ranking digital stuff, like why not throw in Microsoft Word, or why not throw in Stuxnet? Like you can't, like, I don't think you can play this. I don't think it's more like a at best a toy, because there's no goal. There's no.
You would have some really messed up children if you gave this to them as a toy.
I think that like the average infant, if they can manipulate a Genesis controller, would get much more out of this than a adult.
Here, let me toss a little question in the mix here, if I might. You can at least press left to mover bus a la izquierda, or right to mover bus a la derecha, A to tocar corneta, or C to volver a la pantalla inicial. So that is a degree of interaction that's higher than a movie. So,
right.
CrazyBus.
Like, look, here's the thing. A speak and spell is more of a game than this. You know what I mean?
He's got a point, yeah.
This is much more like, it's like...
I'm sorry, you had to invoke Texas Instruments there, and I'm not going to argue with them, so...
What are those things where you, pull the crank, and then, an arrow spins around, and then points at something and says, the cow goes...
See and
That's what
say.
this is. See and
Except
say.
it's only one animal, and it's a bus.
A speak and spell is a game. A see and say is not a game. So I'm sorry, at Mega_Moses. We're very thankful that you nominated this game. I would like to note, although
You just called it a game. I'm sorry. We have to
okay, back up. Thank you for nominating this thing, this digital artifact, shall we say. But I don't think we can rank this because it's not a game.
I mean, the danger is more to the fact that if we were to genuinely rank this one, it opens the floodgates on anyone's sort of little programmer side project experiment.
Any kind of digital thing, any curio. I'm not going to rank Clippy. It's not a game.
Then we have to rank a Calabath, and that's a door we don't want to open.
No, look. I'm not gonna trash Calabath. That is a game. A creature catcher is a game. This is
I refuse to rank Bonzi Buddy. We're not doing that.
This is as much a game as those NES carts that you can order. That's Happy Holidays 2016, and it has some snow falling on you put it in your NES. That's not a game. It's a thing. It's a digital curio. It's not a game.
Are we rejecting all future digital curios offhand now? Are we saying don't submit them to us?
If you nominate,
does this sound like
hang on.
We won't consider them.
Let me consider this. You guys know what demo scene is?
I do.
Mm-hmm.
Is CrazyBus more on the level of demo scene, or can it not even be considered that because it's, unlike most
demo
demos,
scene
really
stuff doesn't really have interactivity, right?
Yeah, no.
Demo
exactly.
scene. If a demo scene was a game, and there are demo scene games, we can rank those. But a demo scene that's a video is a very, very cool thing, but it's certainly not really something that we can put in a list.
I think in honor of the first person who had the idea to list this, it will go on the list. It's going to go off onto the side of the list, and it will forever stay there. But here's what's going to say. CrazyBus for Genesis, not a game, but thanks anyway, at Mega Moses. How about that?
Let me say this. CrazyBus is at least a less disturbing, albeit no less terrible homebrew project than the infamous Hong Kong 97, which actually has a candid corpse shot in it. So,
oh dear.
Yeah, I'm not saying that CrazyBus really deserves any merit of any sort, but it's affably weird and maybe just vaguely creepy without...
Are you going to make the argument that this is a game that can be ranked alongside any other kind of game?
Ties Satenga down.
What I want to say is that
duct tape his mouth.
Hang on.
And throw him into the lake.
What I want to say is that the famous demo scene project Second Reality by Future Crew, I would rather watch that several more times than touch CrazyBus. So I ultimately agree with you guys. I just wanted to sort of make a case that CrazyBus has merit, at least worth checking out.
I didn't say it didn't have merit. I said it's not a game.
Okay.
But
Sorry,
thank
guys.
Thank you, Mega Moses. Thank you for nominating this, because if you hadn't, we wouldn't be able to explain the real parameters of what can be nominated. But don't do this again. So after that, our last game for the show it was nominated by at Renvie, RYNVIE on Twitter, who nominated Super Mario Brothers 3. I honestly don't know what to say about this because it's almost cliche to talk about how great it is, but in other ways, I feel like it's been eclipsed in the popular imagination by Super Mario World, and I don't think that's fair.
I mean, the main thing Super Mario World has over it is it has Yoshi.
Yeah, that's irrelevant. It doesn't matter.
I like Yoshi. Shut up.
I like Yoshi too, but it doesn't add a lot to a Mario game.
Exactly.
No,
it's kind of.
But he's there. He's a big important part of why people care.
Let's do this then. Let's go down the list of things that Mario 3 did before Super Mario World.
Well, almost everything. But so here's the
map's
all right. You got to understand, right? Super Mario Bros. 3 is a sequel to Super Mario Brothers in a way that Nintendo and other game developers did not really do sequels at the time. There were kind of two kinds of sequels. There was the completely different sequel, which is like Zelda 2 is to Zelda 1, and that was very common. And there was the kind of expansion pack sequel, which is like I guess you would say like the Japanese Super Mario Brothers 2 to the original Super Mario Brothers, which it's basically just an extension of the game that's usually much, much harder. Load Runner is another example. There's, Championship Load Runner, which is exactly the same as Load Runner, except the levels are all way, way harder. Now, I'm not saying that Super Mario Bros. 3 was the first game to really do just like let's just do it's a sequel to something, but let's just do the same thing, but add a lot more to it and make it, improve upon it. Definitely not the first game to do that, not the first game sequel to do that, but it is the best of the early game sequels to do that. And the only real comparison I can think of that's fair would be like Pitfall 2, which is a huge improvement on Pitfall 1, but it's almost so different you don't want to I mean, it is a vast expansion over Pitfall. Super Mario Bros. 3 is Super Mario Brothers. It's not that different.
Right.
It just adds so much imaginative, inventive stuff and does it on the NES. And it really isn't improved upon in terms of NES games at all. Like, I can't think of anything that gets better than Super Mario Bros. 3 on the NES. There's a lot of great games.
It is very hard. I think maybe one of the Kirby games might come close, but not many platformers come close.
There's only one. I mean, Kirby's Adventure, but I'd say Kirby's Adventure, comparing it to Super Mario Bros. 3, is really, that's a stretch, because there's a lot of extraneous relevant stuff in Kirby's Adventure, and it's a great game.
I think that's one of the hard parts about beating Super Mario 3 is it does everything that the NES sort of has the capacity to do, and it does it really, really well. And it doesn't have any extraneous stuff because it doesn't need it, because it did it all. Like, it did all the good stuff. Mario was like, okay, I'll do all that. I'll do all the good stuff. So everyone who came along after was like, maybe if we add this, it'll be better. But it's not, because the core experience of Super Mario 3 is so great that it's like, well, anything you add is irrelevant. It's superfluous.
The big downsides to it that I would say are that, again, it is kind of the beginning of like, oh, we're just doing the thing we did before, but we're going to just improve upon it, which you might not like. You know, I mean, the Super Mario Bros. 2 we got in the United States and elsewhere, anywhere but Japan, is not really meant to be a Mario game, but in a lot of ways it's a better sequel to Super Mario Brothers than the Japanese Super Mario Bros. 2 was. Now, I happen to really like the Japanese Super Mario Bros. 2, or Lost Levels, if you must call it that. But I don't think it would have been a good idea to release it and call it Super Mario Bros. 2 in the United States when it would have been released. You know, when they put it out for the disc system for the FDS in Japan, it's different, because it's like, oh no, it's a disc. It already kind of implies that, no, this is just, we're calling it Super Mario Bros. 2, but it really is just like for lunatics who are way too good at Super Mario Brothers. There are not very many new ideas in it. Super Mario 3 has so many new ideas. And on top of that, it's way riskier or way more imaginative than Super Mario World was. Super Mario World doesn't really change that much as you go through the game. It's just more of the same stuff.
That's true. I mean, it does have more secrets to find. Like, there's more I guess you'd say there's more buried underneath the normal part of the game than there was in Super Mario 3. Whereas, you know, Super Mario 3, you kind of just went through it unless you knew from, you know, found out from one of your friends or whatever, the little tricks to skipping worlds and finding.
You found out about the warp whistle from the wizard. Like, if you were a breathing person who played NES games, like, you saw the wizard when it came out, and you learned about the warp whistle. But you know, but the thing about Super Mario Bros. 3 is, like, you got stuff like Giant World, and you know, things that just really warped the whole concept of it changed your perception of the game you were already playing. It's not like it wasn't just changing your idea of what Super Mario Brothers games could be. It was changing your idea of the kind of like, oh, this game could do something different. It wasn't changing the rules of the game. You still had to play it the same way, but it looked different. It surprised you. You know, things like the in World 2, where the sun is up in the corner, and you're like, that looks weird. It's following me. Why? Oh my God, it's coming. You know, and it just comes down after you, and it never happens again anywhere else in the game, right?
The other thing too that I always like, my favorite part of Mario 3 that to my recollection they have not done in any other Mario game is how they brought back the original Mario Brothers as sort of a mini game.
Oh yeah, that's so cool too, right?
But you could play it as a competitive against the other player if you were playing 2-player. So you could like fight each other for whose turn it was to play.
Right.
I used to trick my brother into doing that and then beat him every single time, so he never got to play any levels. It was
funny too, because if you win, because you basically go over levels that have already been completed, and you can challenge them for the right to change the completion of that level. So even if you didn't play that level, it serves no real purpose. It's just there because we can do it. I mean, it's just crazy. It's a crazy thing to do, and they did it just for fun because they thought, well, we want to have some kind of 2-player simultaneous thing. You know, they didn't really do that with Mario until New Super Mario Brothers on the Wii, right?
Yeah, and that's arguably way
actually
more
had competitive
disastrous.
Mario Brothers on the Game Boy Color, if I remember correctly. If you guys want a completely esoteric
well, you
side.
couldn't play simultaneously,
True.
could you?
No, you could. You could do it with the
Really?
link cable. Yeah.
Holy
Side by
crap.
side, you raced through. I can't remember if they were custom built levels for 2-player, if they were the regular levels. But yeah, they were like a side by side multiplayer racing through things at the same time. Like weird.
That's true. Yeah, you could do that. That's right. There were race levels. That's right.
But
Well-
I don't let me interrupt you.
No, like, yeah, with your facts and your correct answers to. but I mean, I guess my thing about Super Mario Bros. 3 is it's way more than it had to be, and it does all kinds of crazy stuff. It is unquestionably the pinnacle of NES game design.
Well, wasn't that the game too that at the time when it came out, it was actually the biggest cart that they had manufactured,
Right, it was
and
huge.
that's why it had so many problems on the NES itself trying to get it to start, because sometimes you would turn it on and it just would glitch out and you couldn't get it to work.
I think that sounds about right. But the thing is, it's like there were games for the NES that did more than Super Mario Bros. 3 that did, that are interesting to check out. And they're like, oh, I didn't know the NES could do that. They stretched the limits of the hardware in ways that Mario 3 never would. But that's not really what I mean. What I'm talking about is more just like crazy stuff that was added to the game. It's a very large game. There is a lot of stuff to do through it. It's got all kinds of hidden Mario-esque secrets. They're just the same kinds of secrets you had in Super Mario Bros. Like, oh, there's an invisible thing there. But then they could go even further than that and just be like, you've got the warps, you've got the alternate paths through some of the worlds. You've got interesting things like the sky world, where you start out in a regular world, then you have a castle that you go up to the top of, and then suddenly you're in the clouds. I mean, this is imaginative stuff that, on top of that, it plays as solidly as any Mario game ever has.
I mean, it's active. I agree. It's completely packed with stuff. I checked out prior to this. I think it takes like 2.5 hours to play through it in a long play. That means with you knowing exactly what to do, it'll take you 2.5 hours, not speed running. That's a huge amount of time for a platformer. Yeah, that's tons of time, especially like on the NES. And it's not like an RPG like mix thing. It's enormous.
I'm trying to remember, did the original NES version let you save in the middle of a play? I can't remember if it did or not. I don't think it did, but
wasn't there some sort of saving? I mean, honestly, I'm more familiar.
Remembers from Super Mario All-Stars, which definitely had saving, but
yeah, unfortunately, that's my main experience with it was All-Stars. Sorry, everyone.
See, I should be able to remember this, but
I'm struggling too, because every time I play it now, I'm usually playing the Mario All-Stars or the Game Boy Advance version or something. I don't usually go back to the original version because the new versions are basically the same thing. It's just they have the additional features. I'm pretty sure you could not save.
I think you're right, because I'm trying to remember if me and my brother ever actually managed to finish the game before our NES finally died.
I really don't think you could save in it, and that is a problem because it's a very long game. But you had the warp whistles. You could get 2 of them in the first world. Like if you play the game for less than 10 minutes, you get 2 warp whistles.
Yeah, you needed the warp whistles. You can't save. I'm 100% sure of that at this point.
Yeah. So, and I remember, but that kind of made the game more interesting to me, because at a certain point, like once I learned that you do 2 warp whistles one after the other, and it'll warp you all the way to world 8, and you can beat the game that way. I did that, and then I went back. It's like, well, I did that. So what else is there to see in this game? And then I would use the warp whistles. Like, I'm going to check out world 2 this time, or I'm going to check out world 4. I'm going to see what, and each world had a different theme to it and a different way of changing the Mario gameplay. So for the most part, I mean, I guess the desert world is basically just, the same thing, but with a desert theme. But it added quicksand to the mix, and it had that crazy sun thing. And it was a really long level with some branching paths and a long world. And then you've got World 3, which I think was the water one, which had a lot of underwater stages. And then the game added the suits to it, which had a lot more variety to the things you could get Mario to do, even compared to Super Mario World. And that's even if you factor in like the different Yoshi colors and stuff like that. Like you've got the Frog Mario, you've got the Raccoon Mario, you've got Fireball Mario, and the Hammer Brothers Mario, and you've got what we always called the P-Wing, I guess. I don't know what that was supposed to be, but the infinite flying item. And you've got the warp whistles and there's just so much going on. And it works. It's not like there's any point where like, well, they didn't really finish this. For all the crazy stuff that was in the game, it all of it meshes very well.
Yeah, there are practically no dead ends in that game at all. Everything leads into something else.
And you got the other things like the weird like Karibo's shoe or whatever that thing's called, where it's just like in one stage and you can get it, or the Tanuki suit, which serves no other purpose other than it's a raccoon suit, plus you can turn into a statue for no real useful purpose. So you got this extra stuff that's there, and you got and again, the world just keeps getting weirder and weirder. And you've got the Piranha Plant world, which is just all pipes, and most of the stages are like you don't know where you're going to end up because there's all these different pipes to use, and it's got vertical scrolling in addition to horizontal scrolling, which is new for. Not new for a Mario game if you count Super Mario Bros. 2, but did it in a way that was really fascinating.
I do think the giant world is pretty brilliant. World 4, where all the blocks and enemies are like the first Mario, all larger. I always really thought that was quirky.
The first time I saw that as a kid, I was just completely blown away. I was like, Dad, come in here. You got to see this. Everything's really huge. And he's like, what? He thought the TV was broken or something,
I mean, it really, every world they gave you was great because it's like a little Mario game in and of itself. And it did really take a lot of the best things about Super Mario Bros. 2, the American version, or the world version, or Doki Doki Panic, or whatever you want to call it, which was that had the different worlds where there's like an ice world and there's a this and that, and it really built upon that, which is why I feel like the Super Mario Bros. 2 that I grew up with is I don't want to say the true Super Mario Bros. 2, but I do feel like that is a true Mario game because of the way it influenced Super Mario Bros. 3. And it's got the whole ice world, and it's got, in each one, as you progressed through that world, felt like each stage was kind of building upon what came before it and asking a little bit more of you and asking you to use the things you learned how to do and just do it a little bit better or do it a little bit different or try it in a different way. I mean, that's a lot of stuff. And I don't think there's a single Super Mario Bros. Game that's ever really, at least the 2D ones, that has ever really risen to that level of innovation.
I'm pretty sure it took until the 3D ones for them to be able to refresh the franchise and really push some new direction.
Right. I'd say Super Mario Bros. 64 is its real competitor because you're talking about something that's, but even that's not a fair comparison because 64, that was really inventing the wheel, that was doing something pretty much new. Whereas comparing it to any other 2D Mario game, I mean, personally, if the original Super Mario Brothers were ranked, I would rank it higher than Super Mario Bros. 3 because I feel like it did even more new for the first time and with a level of polish and finish and playability that just was unheard of at that time. So that really would deserve to be above Mario 3 just because of its place in, not place in history, but for all the stuff that was new about it. That had
I'm hearing some talk about above. You guys want to sort of...
Yeah, we should rank it. So it goes on top.
Right?
It's better than Bionic Commando, without question.
Objection! I think I've been oddly quiet throughout all resolve this speech because I...
You're thinking about the error of your ways, right?
No, it's because I'm a little worried about the flack I'm going to catch for admitting that I feel Super Mario Bros. 3 is a little overrated.
You're not going to catch this flack because it's going right in your face.
All right, well, that's where it's going. Okay, I really like the game. All your points are valid. I'm not going to argue that, blah, blah, blah. But I don't know. I've never really found this one as engaging as Super Mario World, as Super Mario 64, or as American USA Super Mario Bros. 2, or even the original. I don't know. I can't explain it, but 3, as good as it is, and I do like it, it is really a fantastic game in all counts, but something about its design just never really hooked me in, and it doesn't feel as immediately replayable as some of the other Mario games, like the ones I mentioned, do. So, I don't know if you want me to elaborate on that. If there's any
I think you
points.
have to.
Okay, well, I will say I dislike auto-scrolling stages and platformers with a passion, and you have to face those before the boss at the end of every world, and that really kind of gets irritating after a while. I do think that the lack of passwords is really annoying. Granted, you do have the warp whistles, but that's like a little bit of a weird fix for it. Like, why not just have passwords or a save system and onward? It
was early NES. I'm not going to personally hold the system that they've went with against them.
But they did. They put a battery save in Zelda. They had passwords in Kid Icarus. They had passwords in Metroid and countless other games. Yeah, it's not impossible. What they did was they could have done it, and they're like, no, that would make it too expensive to produce, and we're going to make a lot of these, and we want the highest profit margin possible. So, I mean, that you can hold that against it. And we're not ranking subsequent versions of Super Mario Bros. 3. We're ranking the original Super Mario Bros. 3.
Exactly.
I mean, I would say my one criticism of the game is I hate the sprite art style of the game. I do not like what it did to... It started a trend in NES sprite art, which I really despise, which is adding increased detail with decreased colors. So adding black line, basically detail, line art detail, but you're using up one of the 4 colors you have to work with. In Super Mario Bros. 2, they had these beautiful, very colorful, bright sprite art with no black lines, but you could see the definition in the characters. And other games like Mega Man, all the Mega Man games did something without doing that kind of sprite art style. So I don't like that. They did that because it was a way of decreasing the amount of sprites on screen, because you didn't have to use 2 sprites like they did in, say, Contra or Mega Man, to have the variety of colors and the amount of detail in the character.
Well, that's an important part of making the game the way it is.
Right. They couldn't have the game do all the things it does if they didn't do, but you could just tone down the sprite a little bit. I mean, I don't think it's a serious problem. What bothers me more about it is that it kind of started a trend in NES games. And because I'm old, I remember seeing new NES games being like, this doesn't look quite as cool as it could. I didn't like that a lot of NES games after that would just make the sprites simultaneously more detailed but less colorful. But anyway, that's the only bad thing I can say about it.
Well, you have given me a little bit of ammunition for argument because, I think the game looks well enough. I'll certainly give it that. But something about its overall design has always felt a little inconsistent to me. What you were saying about every world being its own Mario game, honestly, I'm not sure I really like that factor about it. It's why I prefer Super Mario World, because, the levels more or less still do feel like the same game running on a line, while, the disconnect in, Mario 3's worlds, I don't know, I think it's a little staggering. And for the record, I hate Pipeland. It's a real confusing mess to navigate. And you have these other worlds which are based off of 2, bad gimmicks, one of which has a lot of water and necessitates a lot of swimming and has that jerk fish, Big Bertha, that can instantly eat and kill you.
Yeah, that fish sucked.
Everyone hates Big Bertha, exactly.
I'll give you that.
Yeah, and the angry sun in the desert land, does anyone like that jerk either?
Yeah, that's cool. When it
was
happens,
unique,
it was
though.
cool.
Cool from one perspective, frustrating from another. I think that when Mario Brothers 3 tries to give you a gimmick level, it doesn't really pan out as well as it would. As it could. The one exception is Kurbo's shoe. I have no problems with it. It is one of the greatest things, except for the fact that it's only in one level. Why don't it's a tease? Why don't we get to use it more?
They came up with it. They can't here. I don't have definitive proof this is true, other than how rational it is. Which is that they came up with it. They were going to do something with it, and they were like, "Well, there's really nothing else we can do with this." So rather than force it into other stages, we'll just put it in this one stage. It'll be a fun little treat, and we're not going to dwell on it because we couldn't do anything with it. But it was a cool enough thing that they left it in. But they're like, yeah, that's good enough.
Yeah, because I mean, if you think about it too, if they were to have put it in other stages, it would be a little bit broken.
You don't do anything with it other than it just allows you to stomp on things, which you can do anyway. It just basically gives you an extra hit to take. But it's cool. You know, it's a cool thing to do, but it's like the sun thing. You do it once, it's great. You do it again, not so great.
Though I will point out, this is apropos of nothing, but I will point out that in Super Mario Maker they did bring back the shoe, but they didn't bring back the scary flying sun.
Or Big Bertha?
Or Big Bertha.
Well, there you have it. They know what the people want, and what they don't want are obnoxious instant death obstacles. Okay, the sun wasn't instant death. It was obnoxious.
Mario Brothers has always had instant death obstacles. Always.
Well, true.
I mean, like,
but
hits are instant death. Yeah. That's what they are. That's 100% instant death all the time.
Well,
I was going to say, like, as far as NES goes, you can argue that this is one of the most frustrating, because I don't think you're even coming close to that. Like,
no, there are definitely more frustrating games, but kind of compared to other Mario games, I do feel that, like, it is a little bit harder in some spots, not necessarily in a good way. The last area is I want to like the Dark World, the last area, which is technically cool in design, but like half the levels are auto-scrolling levels, and it's just such a slog to get to the end of those. It's pretty frustrating. I mean, what I look for in platformers might be a little bit different than what a lot of other people do, so I'm probably going to be standing the lone torch here.
Here's the thing, though. What we're looking at is, I mean, everything on the top 10, it's better than those things. The only thing you can argue is maybe Bionic Commando, but I think there's really no comparison. Bionic Commando is a great game, does a lot of cool stuff, but it's nothing close to Mario 3. Not even close.
Put Super Mario World above Bionic Commando. I would not put
Super Mario World is not up for discussion yet.
Okay, but I would not put Super Mario Bros. 3 above Bionic Commando. It just comes down to
explain that.
Our preference. I think Bionic Commando is a much more economical experience. You know, it can be beaten within an hour. You know, it has a similar level structure to Mario Bros. 3 when you think about it, but you know, it's a good deal more streamlined and focused, and you know, I think more challenging in the right way. It has a better building difficulty curve, whereas the difficulty, I think, in Mario Bros. 3 is really all over the place with the, you know, those gimmick levels, like I mentioned, piping in here and there. And, you know, Bionic Commando allows you to, I think, take things at your own pace, and, you know, you get to be really tactical about how you take on the stages in there, whereas, I don't know, Mario Bros. 3, I think that the pace is just a little difficult to keep up with sometimes, depending on the type of level you get. And there are just so many levels in Mario Bros. 3 that I couldn't tell you individually, like, the ins and outs of each one. It's just too many, whereas, you know, Bionic Commando only having 12 major stages and a handful of neutral areas, you know, I could tell you all about those areas, you know, how to tackle them.
Could you tell, but you said you'd rate Super Mario World higher, but that has even more stages, and the stages are even longer, and they're even harder to distinguish from each other.
All right, I guess I'll have to I guess I'll have to backpedal on that one. But you also
much for
said that
science.
Super Mario World isn't up for discussion yet, so...
No, but I'm just saying,
right.
you based on your own criteria, right? That's
Well,
what you
okay,
said.
so Super Mario World does have that problem too, granted, but I think that World's, overall design is more consistent, and that you can do more within each stage, and that it also, it has less power-ups, sure, but I dislike that the suit power-ups, in 3 cool as they are also really rare, so it only feels like a glimpse of power. I mean, mostly you'll be sticking with the raccoon tail or
The cool thing about
fire
the
pulse.
power-ups in 3, the thing that makes it work is that you can save them, because you mostly get the best power-ups, you get them from the little toad houses, right? Little mushroom houses. And they go into your inventory, and that way you can save them. So you get a frog suit. You don't use it in the desert. You use it in the water world, where oh, I'm going to have to go through this thing. I'm saving my frog suit for that. Or even more to the point, where I would always beat World 1 so I could get the infinite flying wing. And then I would warp to World 8. And then the auto-scrolling with the battleship stage, where it's like the lava that you can somehow touch and it won't kill you. And then all the little, it's like an airship stage, but they're boats. That was really hard. I would just fly over the top of that and nothing can touch me. And I get all the way to the end. And then you beat the mini boss and then you move on. I mean, it gave you all these different options of getting through it that just weren't there in Super Mario World, because they didn't really give you that many different obstacles to deal with either.
And even in the levels in Super Mario World where they give you the cape and you can sort of fly over everything, at least 7 times out of 10, you'd get that cape and then you'd smack into an obstacle somewhere in midair. So it was like, even though it took a little bit of skill to keep yourself in the air and not fall down in front of everything.
It's the difference between a more focused but less ambitious game and a more ambitious but less focused game. That's what you're looking at here, and it is a matter of personal preference.
At the end of the day, you guys were arguing pretty heavily against Batrider because it was slightly going to be more esoteric and more difficult. Bionic Commando is not a game that you can recommend to everyone. It's not like the Mario World 3 is like, you can give this to literally almost anyone who has interest in games, and they'll be like, oh, this is fun, and I got all this stuff I can do, and there's all the stuff that happens. They're not going to enjoy Bionic Commando necessarily.
I would recommend Bionic Commando to everyone myself, not necessarily on the expectation that I expect people to like it, but at least that's definitely worth a try. Granted, Mario Bros. 3 is also worth a try and will probably be more universally embraced, but I'm not sure if that necessarily makes it a better game.
Well, okay, so who disagrees with this? Because I do. I put it at number 1. Who else would?
I'm almost certain Satenga's the only one who's not putting it at the top.
I don't know. I'm looking for X for some backup here, if I might.
I'd have to agree with them. I'm sorry. It's
well played.
On my list.
Yeah.
It's nothing against Bionic Commando.
All right.
No.
Look, if I'm going to lose this battle, I'll just say this. I apologize that I've said so much against Super Mario Bros. 3. It is really an amazing game.
It's not
many aspects, but I just don't like how unfocused it feels. It feels like it feels like too much is my ultimate problem.
I can totally understand that. I can't get behind it, but I can understand it, because it is a less focused game, but it's a game that is incredibly ambitious and imaginative. And at the end of the day, if you can do ambitious and imaginative and do it in a way that doesn't feel like, well, this is half-baked, that doesn't make the player feel like something is wrong, that everything flows naturally, that is incredible. And it's really hard to do. And I don't think it gets done all that much. And that's the thing, is it's just like, yeah, it's unfocused in a way, but it's not like you're ever playing the game, you're like, well, this is broken. Like, this shouldn't have been in the game. If they couldn't get this right, they shouldn't have put it in there. And that's why you only see the sun once. That's why you only see the Kuribo show once. That's why there's certain suits you can get on Mario that you can really only get once or twice, because they realized when they were making it that we can't do that much with this, but it's fun enough, and they left it in. Whereas, I guess it's like kind of a more youthful perspective, whereas like Super Mario World to me seems like, even though it was made right afterwards, is much more like, I don't want to say elderly, but like you're approaching it with like, I'm just going to take the necessary movements and I'm not going to do anything extra. We're just going to do this one thing and we're going to do it perfectly. And that is a perfectly valid way of looking at it, but it's not on the list. And Bionic Commando is, and Bionic Commando is a really focused game, but it just doesn't come close. So I think there's no shame in losing this one, but
All right, well, if I'm forced to concede...
You are. That's all for this episode of Hardcore Gaming 101's Top Games Podcast. Special thanks goes out to at Milo Scat, at Resonance333, at Mega Moses, and at Rinv for nominating these games and or digital curios. And thanks as well to those of you who nominated games that we haven't gotten to yet. We will be getting to you soon. And thanks to my lovely co-hosts and compatriots and our editor, Jeff Rudd, and our theme song composer, Muteki, and of course the support and feedback of listeners like you. Before we head out, anybody got any plugs?
Yes, I certainly do. Sorry, I had to invoke that from Simpsons.
We're all sorry.
All right, excellent. Sorry for this entire episode. It's been quite the episode, but hi, I'm Michael, also known as Satanga, and I have written a book, a horror novel, actually. I fancy myself as a budding writer, but it's a little hard for me to focus to actually get around and write, like 50,000 words, but I actually did so for National Novel Writing Month, NaNoWriMo of last year, and, after some editing and sitting way too long on it, I finally have published it as of last week. As an ebook, it's called Unrecognized, and it's the story of a very troubled 20-something who survives a near suicide, and as he's recovering from that, he finds out that the circumstances and consequences of this horrible experience have actually led to something that could be potentially even worse for himself and the world at large. So, I don't want to say too much else, but, this has nothing to do with games, and it deals some pretty heavy stuff, to say the least.
Where can we find it?
Yeah, it's at lulu.com, which is an online publishing site for budding authors, and it's available for a mere $3.99. You just need an ebook reader. It's what's known as an EPUB file. But yeah, search for Unrecognized, that's UNRECOGNIZED, by me, Michael Plaskett. There's my official name for anyone who wants to know, and I might as well admit that if I want this thing to spread. But just search for Unrecognized over at lulu.com for $4, and I thank you for your patronage if you're interested in a horror book. So, I wrote something. Huzzah.
Check it out, kids. Definitely worthwhile. While we're revealing real names, my name is Turd Ferguson, and
it's really true.
It's true. I know. The problem is when I get carded and stuff, they would say like, "That's a fake. Nobody's name is Turd Ferguson," and then I just like cry like just a little tiny tear coming down and sulk off into the street. Also, I've written nothing and contributed nothing to society, so that's all the more reason to support Satanga. So check it out.
Thank you.
$3.99. That's a deal.
Yeah, I've heard that was actually a ideal price for novels to be sold for whatever reason. Like, it hits the sweet spot between $3 and $5, and seems to be a pretty popular bin. Unfortunately, I'm not much of a salesperson or a businessman, but I'm just throwing this out in the water and rolling with it and see what else I can do to promote it. And I'm also thinking of writing a second book, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Do it. Dream big, man.
I intend to.
All right. After you've already blown your dough on that novel, You can also support this podcast and HardcoreGaming101.net as a whole by making a small monthly donation at patreon.com/HG101. I know I do. And you can also help us out by following HG_101 and at GC9X on Twitter. But most importantly, you can help us claw our way into the zeitgeist by getting on iTunes, subscribing to HG101, and giving us a 5-star review. I believe we're also now on Stitcher.
What the hell is Stitcher?
I don't know, but it's awesome because people will definitely check us out and give us good ratings on whatever they do. I don't know how Stitcher rates
It's
things.
#1 music distribution service for surgeons worldwide.
Seriously?
Because, they stitch up bodies in the
We got it. We got it.
Wink!
Is there any way I can unget that?
You send all your hate mail to Michael Plaskett at contravania.com. On Twitter, I mean. Shoot. So, yeah, that's all.
Yeah, so you can get on iTunes or whatever and subscribe to us and give us a 5-star review. Do it, or we'll throw you under the CrazyBus. Until next time, keep keeping it real. It's not really that crazy of a bus, too. Like, it doesn't even deliver on its promise.
That's actually
like,
my
it's
main
a normal
problem
bus.
with the game is that it's called CrazyBus, and it is normal bus.
I almost want to say that CrazyBus at least has merit on, like, a horror story level, because just the overall composition of this game almost feels like, no offense to Tom, its creator, but it almost feels like something a serial murderer would have filmed. Except instead of corpses, it's
Takes too much effort.
What? Just accuse this guy of being a serial murderer?
I don't want
to be fair,
just...
he accused him of being, in every respect, indiscernible from a serial murderer, except for the serial murders.
Yeah, it's
I
not...
don't think that you murdered people in a sequence.
If we're talking
but
about...
what I do think is that your works are indistinguishable from those of, say, Charles Manson.